What's up, everybody? This is Solid here, and today I'm going to be talking about tips and tricks on improving squad communication. So, first thing we're going to go over is obviously you're going to be landing, or choosing where you're going to be landing, right? So, very very important is to decide where you're going to land, and then land within in close vicinity of each other, right? In close proximity. For me, my rule is I like to land, a few houses, maximum two houses away from each other. That way, if your teammate gets knocked, then at least there's a greater chance of you being able to revive your teammate. While we're landing and parachuting to our location, always looking around you to see where your enemies also land, so that way you kind of have a better idea of where to watch out for. So for example, if you're landing in a town, being like, hey, there's a team to the east and there's a team to the north of us inside town, right? And then laying down markers on the map quickly while you're looting. Next tip is calling if you have a weapon. So right when you land, sometimes you're unlucky, RNG's not on your side, and you don't have a weapon, but there's an enemy close by. It's really important, and I find that this is very very useful to quickly be like, guys, I don't have a weapon, or guys, I have an AK, or I have a weapon, come towards me, right? And that way your teammates can come towards you, so that you can kind of give them that extra protection in case someone's chasing them down with a shotgun or something like that. You can hose them down. You can hose down your enemies. So that's really really important. Calling out if you have a weapon right away. That way you can protect your teammates that are vulnerable. So after things have settled down, maybe you've cleared the town already, or maybe there's still another team left. You want to call out any available level 2 helmets, backpacks, and armor. At this point, when you've already landed, there's a little bit of action going on. You should have a vest or a helmet or a backpack. And if you don't, you need to call that out too. You need to be like, hey guys, I don't have a backpack. If you guys see one, please let me know. And that way they can drop down a marker whenever they find one. Another thing that's really important to communicate is available gun attachments, right? So scopes and sights, extended mags, a tactical stock, compensators, suppressors, grips, all of that stuff. It's really important to communicate that. Does anyone need a 4x scope? Does anyone need compensator AR, extended quick SMG? Like, these are really really important things, really important attachments on a lot of guns. So communicating if someone needs it, so you can just pick it up for them, and then afterwards meet up with each other and give each other the gear. Really really important. So the next step, or the next tip here, is spotting enemies. Never try your best to never say the left of me or the front of me. The better way to communicate where an enemy is saying something like, the enemy is north of my location, right? So that way when your teammate sees you, sees your marker on their screen, they can quickly look at the compass and be like, okay, north of him. So that way they know which general direction to be guarding and to keep their eye on, right? So using the compass directions is super super important. If you're the one calling where the enemy is, if it's possible, lay down a marker on the map, right? If you're safe, obviously. That way your teammates has for example, a green marker on their map to kind of to know. Again, the more information you give, the better, right? And then if you're even more advanced and you have and you're really good with the new quick marker system, where it lays down a temporary line on the compass, it's the Alt and wheel mouse click. Laying that down is also really really helpful as well. Again, more information for your teammates, the better chance of your team's success. So the next step is, or the next tip is, being as descriptive as possible, right? And this takes a lot of practice, and the ability to keep describing what you're seeing until your teammates confirm or just straight up deny that they can't see or have visual on the enemy, is super helpful. And like I said, this takes lots of practice. So I'll give you a couple of examples of some descriptive ways to help your teammates out. So for example, the enemy is in a two-story brown building. On the second floor, the most right window, right? So that's a really good way of describing an enemy inside a building. And then if you go even further, you're wearing a level 2 helmet. That again, now this way, if your teammate sees someone with wearing a level 1 helmet, then you can be like, hey, yo guys, I see someone else, so there's two people now, right? And communicating that helps out so much. And then you can go further if your teammate still doesn't know what building you're talking about. Even after you've laid down markers and temporary markers and all that stuff, you can say white painted wood top, brown bottom. Or you can say, when you've laid down the temporary marker, on my yellow line or yellow marker if you lay them down. So that's kind of a good way to kind of describe buildings and where enemies are in buildings. Now, sometimes you're playing in a map or you see an enemy out in the open, right? And so this gets really tricky as well, where you're like, oh, behind a tree or a rock, right? And sometimes you're in like a jungle, so there's tons of trees everywhere. Or there's tons of rocks everywhere. So sometimes it's good to say flat rock or pointed rock, right? And then you can go even further by saying rock mid-hill, like in the middle of the hill, or at the top of the hill, or at the bottom of the hill. Really, really important, and a good way to kind of give your teammates more of an idea of where this rock that you're looking at. Right, and if you see that they're wearing something in particular, so for example, some people have the yellow track pants, so you can say wearing a yellow pants with level 1 helmet, or again, if you lay down a marker on my orange line or a marker on the compass or on the map. Next tip is going to be calling out how many enemies you see. So sometimes it'll be good to say, guys, I see a squad of 4, or hey guys, I only see 2. Right, so that means there's potentially more, but right now I currently only see 2, right? And that way, again, your teammates, if they see a third one, they can be like, hey guys, I see a third one, right? So that way, maybe on your angle you only see 2, but that means that your teammate just confirmed there's a third person. So just be aware that there's a third person, right? Another tip is calling out an estimated distance, and I find this super helpful. For example, guys, I hear or I see an enemy 100 meters away or 200 meters away, right? Or 100 meters or less. You want to make sure that there's urgency inside your voice, especially if you see an enemy really close by. So for me, if I see an enemy really close by and I want my teammates to know that I need help right away, I go on me, or close, really close, and then that way my teammates can start to converge on my location. Next tip is footsteps, right? Communicating that you hear footsteps first off, because if you hear footsteps, then you know that they are within 100 meters of you, 60 meters, I believe. Wacky Jackie has a really good video on footsteps and sounds and the distances. What's really important to communicate here is different footsteps make different sounds. So if you're on grass, if you're on hardwood floor, if you're upstairs or on the same floor or a floor below you, makes different sounds. So learning and mastering which sound makes what noise is so important, and that's going to help again with your team's survival. Being able to tell your teammates, guys, I hear him outside, right? Like if you hear rustling of grass or dirt, versus you hear footsteps, right? Because of the hardwood floors, and not only that, but you hear it from upstairs. So being able to tell your teammates, guys, I'm inside this house. He's inside my house right now. He's upstairs, right? Next tip is when running into your first circle. I make it a habit for our squad and our team to communicate our medical situation. So again, I've played with different teams, and different teams have different ways of sharing this knowledge. For my team, we like to say 2 numbers. So the first number is your med kits and your first aid. So let's say you have 1 med kit and 3 first aids. I would add that together. So that's 4. And then the second number is boosters, so adrenaline, painkillers, and energy drinks. Let's say I have no adrenaline, but I have one painkiller and one energy drink. I would add those together, so that's 2. So my call would be 4-2. I am 4-2, which now tells my team that I have 4 med kits or first aid, and I have 2 boosters, right? And this way your team can communicate, and that way you can distribute a good even amount of meds and boosters among your teammates. Next tip is circle timer and circle shrinking. Sometimes it's really good to remind your teammates, hey guys, circle's coming in a minute. So that way, you're not just lollygagging around inside town, screwing around and getting greedy and stuff like that. It's good to be like, okay guys, we're far away from circle. 1 minute until circle moves in, we should probably get going. Or later on in the match, when circle's shrinking a lot quicker and you're not in a good position, right? It's good for you to communicate that. Circle's coming in 10 seconds, guys. We really need to get into circle. We're in a bad spot, right? So that way your teammates know if it's even worth fighting a team. Maybe it's better to run into circle and then hold circle and have this team run in afterwards, and you just guard it, right? The next tip is enemy weapons. Most importantly, calling out crate guns. Like if you hear a Groza, if you hear an AUG, if you hear an right? It's really, really important. Because knowing if a sniper rifle has an that's a one-shot kill. If you have M24 or Kar 98, that's a one-shot knock, right? So it's super, super important, okay, to call those out. Another tip is knocked and down enemies. It's really important to call that out. If you knock an enemy, let your teammates know. If you're down yourself, let your teammates know, because sometimes your teammates they're in the heat of the battle, right? So they don't. It's hard for them to keep track of everything. So, and they might not even know that you're knocked because they're so busy fighting this enemy that just knocked you, right? So, let them know that you're knocked, that you knocked someone else, so that they can focus on the other enemies. Communicating, where did the shot come from? How many of them did you see? And if you thirst, we call it thirsting in our group. Thirsting is when an enemy is knocked and you kill them right away, right? It's really important to communicate that, because that way your teammate knows that in the kill feed, that if they were paying attention to the kill feed, sometimes it looks like when you kill somebody, it shows up on your kill feed, and then if you kill them, it shows again on your kill feed. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, if your teammate says there's 2 of them, and then you knock and then you kill them, it looks like you just killed 2 people, right? So it's really good to confirm that, guys, I just thirsted them, there's still one more guy at play here. Okay, so really, really important. Another tip is vehicle callouts, right? If you hear a UAZ, a buggy, a boat, communicating how many is in the transport, the distance that they're at. And it's really important because sometimes your team, you didn't have the greatest loot, you don't have that much ammo. It's not worth it to spray down a UAZ or a Dacia or a car or whatever, right? Because if you don't blow up that car, you just wasted pretty much all your ammo, right? So sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes they're in a tuk-tuk and Sanuk, right? And that's an easy target. So yeah, you do want to spray it down, right? So super, super important to communicate vehicles when you hear them. And that way you can kind of predict which direction they're coming from and all that. So lastly, I just want to say, to wrap this all up, the more information you share with your teammates, the better you are prepared to win. So that's all the tips I have for improving squad communication. If I missed something that your squad does, I would love for you to share that in the comments down below. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the battlegrounds.